Comprehensive Plan Public Hearing for Wednesday, May 3rd, 2023. Madam Clerk, may we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Barnett.
Here.
Commissioner Baxter.
Here.
Commissioner Bernard.
Here.
Commissioner Marino.
Here.
Vice Mayor Sacks. Mayor Weiss.
Here.
Commissioner Woodward. Here. Thank you.
And this morning, our invocation and pledge allegiance is going to be led by Vice Mayor Sacks. If you're able to, please rise.
Dear God, as we gather here today, we pray that we are ever mindful of opportunities to render our service to fellow citizens and to our community. Keeping in mind always the enduring values of life, exerting our efforts in those areas and on those things upon which future generations can build with confidence. Let us continue to strive to make a better world. We say amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All righty. Has there been proof of publication?
Good morning, and yes, Mayor, there has.
All right. Is there a motion to receive and file? We have a motion by Commissioner Baxter, a second by Commissioner Barnett. All in favor, all opposed, that motion carries 7-0. All right. Are there any additions, deletions, or substitutions?
There are no deletions or substitutions, but we have received a couple hundred additional pages of correspondence since publication of the agenda, and hard copies have been provided to the clerk.
All right. With that, we've got a motion to receive and file, or is it
So moved.
from Commissioner Bernard and a second by the Vice Mayor Sacks. Do we have any postponements for today?
No, Mayor, we do not.
All right, and so do we have a motion to adopt the agenda as presented? We have a motion from Commissioner Marino, a second by the Vice Mayor. All in favor, all opposed, that motion carries 7-0. All right, before we get started with the public hearing, just to set some expectations about how our day is going to go today. We have a very full day in front of us. And so we want to make sure that everybody is able to fully participate. So we will not start the GL case, and that's, what is that, 5B2, the Indian Trails Grove Ag Reserve Exchange, until after lunch. We're going to have at least a minimum hour, 1 hour for lunch, but it may be a bit longer depending on when we wrap up before we hear the GL, that case this afternoon. I ask you, if you're going to be making public comments, please to submit a comment card and turn that into staff here. That will make its way up here. But also, if you can be brief with your remarks, we have a lot on our agenda today and want to make sure we have an opportunity for everybody to be heard on this. So with that, I think we can get started. So we will start with item number 3, and this is Amendment Round 2380A2 adoption.
The first item on this section of the agenda, 3A1, is the 60th Street North Thoroughfare Right-of-Way Identification Map. This item had been transmitted by the board at the February 1st Comprehensive Plan hearing. And just a refresher, this is not adding a new segment to the Thoroughfare Right-of-Way Identification Map, but rather is expanding the designated right-of-way from 80 feet to 100 feet for this segment of roadway between 140th Avenue North and State Road 7. As I mentioned, this had previously been transmitted, and Planning and Engineering provided a presentation at that hearing, so we are prepared with a presentation if the board would prefer.
Does anybody on the board need a presentation on this? Okay. All right, none is necessary at this time. We have some cards.
On item 3A1, we have 2 cards. William Kirk, followed by Hector Cifuentes.
Morning. I live at 13618 60th Street, and I'm opposed to this. I would like to see what you all are planning to do with stormwater runoff, stormwater quality improvement, and how much land you're actually planning on taking. You know, as a homeowner, we have got very minimal information on this. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Could you, by the way, in the future, anybody who comes up, please, your name and address for the record?
Buenos días.
Buenos días.
Quiero preguntar porque... mi nombre es Héctor Cifuentes. Mi dirección es 1388 216 TH Street North. Quiero preguntar porque mi casa se está viendo afectada por unos HOT que me le pusieron a mis permisos y quiero saber si eso tiene que ver con este proyecto.
He's got a question, for the record, Jorge Perez with the Palm Beach County Planning Department. He's got a question on, he submitted some building permits for his home, and those permits have been put on hold, and he's asking if that has anything to do with this TIM amendment.
Mis permisos fueron aprobados hace un año y ahora me llegó una carta diciendo que tengo que volver a buscar a un señor Tom que nunca encuentro. Pero quiero saber si tiene que ver con este proyecto.
He said he submitted those permits a year ago, and they were approved, but now there's a hold, and he has been told that he needs to contact a TUM person who he can never locate.
Yeah.
And that's it.
And Mayor, I'll reach out to him, we'll find the permit number and see what the situation is.
Mr. Patrick Rudder is going to, we'll have somebody reach out to you, sir, and follow up on that.
Ellos te van a contactar.
Gracias.
Okay, that's it for cards.
Okay, that's it for cards. All right, bring it back to the board. Is there any further discussion on this matter? If not, would somebody like to provide a motion to adopt an ordinance for the 60th Street North TIM Amendment? We have a motion by Commissioner Baxter, a second by Commissioner Bernard. Seeing no further discussion, all in favor, all opposed, that motion carries 7-0. Good. And just for the clerk's information, if you have any question on who's making a motion or a second, please feel free to interrupt us. I know sometimes we move a little fast, so. Okay. All right, moving on. We are now on to our regular agenda, and this is item 4A, a privately proposed text initiation.
And the first item in this section of the agenda is Gold Coast Logistics text initiation, and we'll begin with a presentation by the applicant, followed by a staff presentation by Travis Goodson with the Planning Division.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, George Gentile, representing 15445 US 441 LLC, which is the Gold Coast Logistics property. We're here this morning just to ask for your approval to submit a privately initiated text amendment. We know that you're not approving that today, so we would like to go over our presentation, and then we'll answer any questions that you may have. As I indicated, the request is for a minor text amendment to policy 1.5-6 located, and that text amendment includes location, frontage, and access on State Road 7. It says now north of Rio Grande Road, and this is for the commerce, moving the commerce land use designation a little bit farther, which I'm going to explain why we think that it's a logical progression. and we're asking it to go to Laurina Road. In the text, it also includes Atlantic Avenue, Boynton Beach Boulevard, to have access to these roadways through existing commercial or industrial sites. And it also says the site's located on the west side of State Road 7 must share a common border with a property with commercial or industrial land use. And that's an important clause in that statement for our request. And I'm going the wrong way, I apologize. The CMR land use, as you all know, was established to provide a mechanism for some light industrial in both the urban, suburban, and the ag reserve tier. You had done a study, initially did not go through with some of the items, which included creating light industrial uses in the ag reserve that support the agricultural businesses, but also to provide other jobs in that area that may be associated with farming or as well as not with farming. The the commerce land use category was in response to a lot of other requested light industrial uses in that area to support the agricultural community. This is the specific site that we're looking at, which is just on the north side of Rena Road, west side of 441, State Road 7. And again, our request is to just change the location to that area. And I don't know why it's going the wrong way on me. I apologize. It's not going any farther. I must have the wrong presentation on. Oh, here we go. I'm sorry. This is the existing land use. You can see the site just to the north of this property is actually land use industrial, and it is a light industrial zoning category. Also, the existing zoning is light industrial. There's the site, and you can see the progression of commercial and MUPDs and industrial that is happening at Atlantic Avenue. It would have been logical to actually have brought this line to the north side of the property at least, if not to the Laurina Road when the commission first looked at that, because that property's been industrial prior to the commerce land use designation being instituted by the county. Having a very bad problem with your clicker here. Yeah, okay. Which one? Okay. So if we look at what's happened here, this property, as I indicated, is Sunflower Landscape and Maintenance. They've had the industrial land use as well as the light industrial zoning designation on it prior to the adoption of the commerce land use location. The site below it is the logistics site, Gold Coast Logistics. It's a little over 6 acres, and it's relatively small for any kind of real production of agricultural on this site. This is where the commerce land use designation was set by the County Commission in November. You also transmitted the HJKJ application to do the commerce land use, and you now have an application for light industrial on that application as well. So the progression is happening in that area. And we're asking to move that line to the next road on the west side, which I think is also in a more appropriate location because you're talking about these properties that are on the west side of 441. And that would be really the logical location, which is the farthest road south of Atlantic on this side of the road. This is an enlargement of that area. This is the logistics site. Originally, there was a landscape business operating with access out to Laurina Road as well as to 441. And then the north property is the industrial zone and industrial property now, which is the Sunflower Landscape business. You can only do the landscape business now in the in that light industrial designation. This is the Sunflower landscape, which is light industrial. They have a tremendous amount of vehicles and trucks that they operate out of that center on a daily basis and have been operating for a while there. So our request is to promote support services. We're looking to do a business that would provide cold storage for the agricultural products and to provide last mile transport for those items. The requested change in the boundaries, we think, is a logical progression to that area. There's a road at that location, and the site is kind of small, so the support to the agriculture community would be best warranted for this. We even heard, and we discussed at the Planning Commission meeting, that you could also do a packing house on this right now, but you really wouldn't want to put residential on this location. And as I said, the smaller properties are better suited for providing the support services. And again, we need to keep in mind that we are adjacent. We meet the intent of the commerce if we move it to that point to allow for us to be next. We're already next to industrial property, which is a requirement for those properties on the west side. We have 2 letters of support that we provided you. One is from Roth Farms. They're in support of this because there is a definite need for the cold storage facility and for them to take those items and transport them to their last destination, to our grocery stores and to other areas. We anticipate only 2 to 3 vehicles a day that would leave this facility. They would have offices at this location to manage the operations and provide other jobs to this location other than specifically, such as secretarial jobs and other management jobs. We also have a letter from Top Shop Agriculture, which is Mark Mullinax. They also are supporting this because they are also in the operation of doing needing the cold storage for their products that they bring into here. So thank you very much. With that, I'll answer any questions.
All right, thank you very much for your presentation. Are there any questions from the board at this time? Not seeing any. All right, would staff like to make a presentation?
It's not working.
Good morning, Travis Goodson with the Planning Division. This request is to consider initiation of a private text amendment for a project known as Gold Coast Logistics, and it's with regard to the commerce location criteria. So for a brief overview on text initiations, all comprehensive plan text and map series amendments require initiation by the board. The request can be privately proposed or staff proposed. Initiation by the board authorizes staff to then process a text amendment request and accept an associated future land use or development order amendment application by the applicant for full processing. And so, as George Mr. Gentile had talked about, the recently adopted Commerce Future Land Use Designation contains specific location criteria within the agricultural reserve tier. These include policy requirements that any parcel of land requesting the Commerce FLU designation have frontage and access on State Road 7, north of Rio Grande Avenue, on Boynton Beach Boulevard, on Atlantic Avenue, or access to these roadways through existing commercial or industrial sites. This particular text amendment request centers on a 6.33 acre parcel located at the northwest corner of State Road 7 and Lorena Road, shown outlined in red. If the board initiates, the applicant will submit a future land use application this month requesting the CMR designation. And so again, the intent of this text amendment request is to modify a specific part of the commerce location criteria to allow the application of the Commerce Future Land Use Designation along State Road 7 to be north of Lorena Road instead of the currently adopted Rio Grande Avenue. So this graphic depicts the surrounding, the area surrounding the subject site. Subject site is in red outline. Butting the site to the north is the Sunflower Industrial, and to the north of that is EJKJ, which is in process requesting the Commerce FLU. It was transmitted by this board in November. The red dash line currently shows the eligibility segment on State Road 7 for the application of the Commerce Flu designation. The applicant's proposal is to, would extend this segment northward by about a quarter mile to Lorena Road in order that the subject parcel become eligible then to request the Commerce Flu designation. Staff's assessment of the text amendment considered that the Commerce Flu designation and supporting policies were adopted as recent as August 25th, 2022, following over a year of AgReserve workshops and public hearings on the topic. The existing location criteria resulted from area residents' concerns regarding the location of the commerce in a predominantly residential corridor. The BCC directed staff to work with the public after transmittal of the commerce language, and so this existing location criteria was the result of those discussions and was brought to the board and ultimately adopted by the board in August. Representatives for the applicant were also present for these discussions in the public hearings and advocated on behalf of the applicant at the time. Ultimately, the board adopted this existing criteria, which excludes the subject site from requesting the Commerce Flu designation. And so in consideration of this information and as indicated in the published staff report, staff is recommending denial of this requested text initiation. In April, the Planning Commission recommended denial by a vote of 9-0. And your recommended motion today would be to deny initiation. However, should the board initiate this proposed amendment, staff will return with a full analysis and staff recommendation, staff report to be heard at a future public hearing. That concludes staff's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions of staff at this time? Commissioner Woodward, you're recognized.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I did have a question about the full boundaries of this. I appreciate all the work that went into putting this into place. You have the Rio Grande Avenue on State Road 7. Do you have intersections for all east-west, north-south that are similar to that? As far as, it's not a very well-known road, that's why I'm asking. Are there other intersections going east and west, north and south?
Not in this area. I think after the discussions, as Travis mentioned, there was a lot of discussion at the transmittal hearing of the corridor further south along State Road 7 being residential in character. But recognizing, if you look, there was a map, or actually it's up there now, surrounding that intersection of Atlantic and State Road 7, there was a pre-existing cluster of industrial, some of which predated the master plan. So that next roadway kind of further south of where that cluster is that Rio Grande Avenue. There aren't that many in the way of intersections in this immediate corridor of State Road 7.
Can you tell me why that one was picked and not the next one down? Because one just south of that is already an industrial park, so I'm not sure why we would put a line above something that's already industrial.
Right, so that site, the Sunflower site, was granted the industrial prior to having any policy guidance in the comprehensive plan with respect to industrial. So when at the transmittal hearing, the board directed staff to work with the community on adjusting the boundary, because originally a transmittal, all of the State Road 7 corridor throughout the agricultural reserve was proposed to be an allowable location for commerce. But through those discussions, and there were some meetings held with the public, Rio Grande was kind of that comfort zone that was found, and then that was discussed at the Board of County Commissioners hearing last year, and that's the location that the board adopted.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, Commissioner Baxter, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess I had a few questions, and that was one of them. Like, how did we originally decide where this line was located, especially if we have industrial on top and bottom, or more of, it just seems to be sandwiched in between two properties, and actually is an agricultural accessory is what they want to put there. And if we're trying to preserve agriculture and provide some services for them, I think it would be important for what they would like to do if this went through. It just seems to help farmers and agriculture stay there longer.
Okay.
So I guess my question still, again, was there initial thoughts to this? Like why here versus anywhere else when there is stuff below, above and below that is industrial?
So I get kind of two components to that answer. So, this was kind of unique in that there aren't many times where we have a completely new future land use designation brought into the comprehensive plan. So when we were discussing the location criteria, yes, there are sites throughout the ag reserve that had a pre-existing industrial, but we were kind of looking at this new classification. And when you get south of Sunflower, that segment, and a lot of the concern from the public when we had those discussions with them was that residential nature of this corridor. So again, Rio Grande was kind of that compromise that was discussed and then discussed at the adoption hearing, and ultimately what was adopted.
Commissioner Marino, you're recognized.
Thank you. Thank you. I watched the planning meeting, and I found that the commissioners were very specific. They supported the idea of this, just not in this location. But this location is, right now, current land use is one house, correct? One single-family house that would be on 441. Is that what the?
I don't believe, and I think it's vacant right now. I don't believe there's a residential structure.
No, but
what it could be.
What it could be.
Yes.
Would be one single-family house. An entrance would be, right, they'd be right on 441, 6 acres. So they could screen it. However, no one's going to want to do that. So what would we propose that be in the future if it's not a single-family residence?
So this site has the AGR zoning. So there are other uses that, there we go. There are other uses that are allowable within AGR zoning, so it wouldn't necessarily have to be a single family home.
So if someone wanted to, in the ag category, someone could buy this, put a packing house on it? Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. And if I could clarify, the items in blue, those are institutional uses, and those aren't allowed west of State Road 7. So it would be all of the uses in the gray, the green, the orange, and then the further gray.
So it's sort of like tomato. You could have a packing house, but you can't have cold storage. Okay. I am in favor of transmittal, but I listened to the rest of my commissioners. Oh, and let me add one more comment to that, since I'm commenting instead of questioning. Again, it goes back to, we need to support the residents, and this is a way to do that. And everybody keeps saying, we need to support the residents, but it's not in my backyard. So where do you support them, and how do you support them? Thank you.
All right, I think we have some comment cards. We are on 4A1.
We have lots of comment cards today, so it's kind of like a mishmash up here. So we have 3 speaking cards and 1 not speaking card. So Dr. Lori Vinokur, Andrew Rips, and Dagmar Braz. And you can take both sides of the podiums, please. Thank you.
Good morning, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Commissioners. I'm Lori Vinokur. 10626 La Reina Road, right in the Ag Reserve. I'm a farmer. I grow exotic fruits. I have horses, rabbits. My farm is located right on La Reina Road next to this proposed industrial development. I'm also president of the Alliance of Delray, and for 18 years I've been attending meetings working for the residents and for the farmers in the Agricultural Reserve. Today, I'm asking for relief for my community and myself. The proposed development is not just at my doorstep, it's a few feet away from the bedrooms in the home. The developer has been apparently advertising in Construction Journal for bids for this project, stating that it's an industrial development, heavy and highway industrial manufacturing, and a processing plant. Just like he indicated a year ago to me and my president of Tierra del Rey, and sent this information that he wants to make a Florida logistics terminal at this location. That was a year ago, and that would be his third logistics terminal, other than where he had from Arizona and one in Illinois. Even if it's cold storage for vegetables, the number of tractor trailers that would still be the same, and a 95,000 square foot refrigerator building would be devastating. Please deny this application as staff recommended. The staff worked over a year to square off the industrial node at 441 and Atlantic, and apparently because they couldn't put in county records south of Sunflower. It can't be, because that's not a road or a political or geographical boundary. They had to use the closest road, which was, of course, Rio Grande Avenue. They did not intend for CMR to be in front of 78 home sites of Tierra del Rey, a residential community, which would be adjacent to, not just at my doorstep, at the bedrooms of the home. So they recommended that north of Rio Grande, because the entire corridor south of Rio Grande and south of Sunflower, and Sunflower is separated from the Tierra del Rey by a canal, and it's north, and those brothers there who own Sunflower have owned it for 20 or 30 years, and they just needed that to be that. We didn't have the CMR at the time. They needed that to be in industrial for their nursery landscaping business that they do not intend to sell. And you did not see a sign go up on their property for sale after they did get the industrial designation, because they want to keep their nursery there. So we supported that. We're separated. So please deny this application.
Vice Mayor Sachs, you're recognized.
President Vinegar, would you come back up for a minute? I didn't hear this from the staff report. What is the proximity between this industrial use for refrigerated trucks and residences?
It's inches. Inches. It's next to the house I own. It's next to the property of the house I own, and the bedrooms are right there next to this property. It's adjacent to, but of course the setback of properties in that area is whatever it is, and it's a couple 25 or 30 feet.
All right. Thank you very much. Could I have a question of staff, please, Mayor?
Of course.
What in staff? What are we looking at? A refrigerated storehouse? Are we looking at trucks coming in and out of this facility? Are we looking at or are we just looking at like big one warehouse that's a refrigerated warehouse for fruits and vegetables? Who is it that I'm looking at here? You right there? Okay, good. I wonder if you could answer my questions, please. Trying to visualize this.
No, that's a great question. That level of detail has not been submitted at this time. We're just considering whether the board would like to entertain the initiation of this. Those types of details will need to come from the applicant if this is initiated and a full future land use atlas application is submitted. So staff doesn't have that level of detail at this time. The applicant may want to discuss that.
Well, let me ask you, if the applicant is requesting a refrigerated storehouse, do the fruits and vegetables have to go into the storehouse, and then do they have to exit the storehouse? Is this basically what the applicant, and without going into the detail which would come at the next hearing, but is that basically what the applicant is requesting?
That's basically how I understand it, yes.
Good. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Commissioner Bernard, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question to staff. If whatever we decide to do, would the applicant have to present the site at transmittal, or how do we do it so that way we would know exactly what the final product would be?
Right. So if it's initiated today, the applicant will submit their full package, and it will have to go to a planning commission hearing in the future, followed by a transmittal hearing. If it's transmitted, then adoption hearing. So the board will have the opportunity to hear more on the application at the transmittal hearing.
I guess the question is, would we be able to see both the zoning and the planning at the same time?
We're thinking the
Patrick?
same. Commissioner, yes. So you would have the companion zoning item that would come along with it. The board would see it, should it be transmitted at the adoption hearing.
Okay.
That would include that level of information, and certainly an applicant could provide even more information that the board might want if it reaches that point.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Woodward?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. My question is, if we move this to transmittal today, would, on the next level, we'd be able to address setbacks, buffer zones, everything that would maybe make the neighbors see this as a more palatable project? Is that the level where we would have this input?
So if this is initiated today, when we come back for transmittal, we would have our detailed, thorough analysis. And at that point, at transmittal, if there were certain conditions that you wanted to place, such as additional setbacks, that would be the opportunity to do that. And then we would also likely have a condition of approval that the adoption hearing be concurrent with the zoning application. So that way, that's when really you can see all the very specific setbacks and details.
Let me just, I want to try and clarify for myself. If this is transmitted, then this would come back for adoption on its own as a text change just for the roadway, correct? And then there would be a separate application from the applicant to then acquire the land use that would then be transmitted if the board did that. Can you just explain
that's a great-
everything that's in front of us right now?
Absolutely, yes. So today is simply initiation. If you want staff to go forward and allow the intake for the site-specific, and it would be concurrent. So when we come back to you for transmittal, we would have the proposed text language change in the comprehensive plan, which would modify the location criteria, and you would be hearing the site-specific together. So those would run with each other. The site-specific for this property, along with the text change to the comprehensive plan, which would simply be a modification of the location criteria.
It still seems to me that there's two things going on, right? One is you're
Yeah.
moving the location of
Right.
where this is allowable, that would have to be, so you'd have to change the comprehensive plan.
Right.
So that has to go through its own process.
Right, but those would be running together. So for instance, if you,
But there would still be, but then
there'd
there
be
would,
two yes.
there would then be another item that would have to do with the request for the change in land use that would run its own. Now, you're saying they're going to run concurrently.
Correct, they would be running together.
All right. Commissioner Bernard, you recognize.
Mr. Mayor, so just to make sure, if it's transmitted today, when it comes back, would we be able to, because what I don't want to do is approve the change until we're at the adoption and we're seeing everything in front of us. Is that possible to do?
Yes, and I'm going to kind of piggyback on the first question, then also your question. So this is similar to other projects we've seen in the agricultural reserve. A lot of site-specific projects require text amendments within the comprehensive plan, like Erickson today, right? So Erickson later on the agenda, for instance, that had previously been initiated, and then that initiation is kind of that, okay, staff go forward, intake the applications, and then the needed text amendments to the comprehensive plan and that actual site-specific amendment run together. So should it be initiated today, we'll be back two more times, transmittal, and then what you're referring to, Commissioner Bernard, is that concurrent adoption hearing when zoning, and these changes will be at the same hearing, so all of those details are fleshed out at one public hearing.
And so, Mr. Mayor, just to follow up, so on the transmittal side, if we do transmit when it comes back, we're still not tied to it until
Correct.
the final adoption?
Yes, there have been examples where something has been transmitted and then is ultimately not adopted.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Sorry about that.
Helpful. Good morning. My name is Andrew Rips, resident at 10322 El Paraiso Place, and I'm president of Tierra del Rey, a 78-home, multi-acre agricultural and equestrian community. We opposed the Gold Coast application again and voiced our objection at the Planning Commission that you heard about. and we voiced our objection last year before the Board of Commissioners. This is my third time, hopefully a hat trick. But two boards before you, the Commissioners and the Planning Commission, rejected this. And I'd like to tell you a little bit more about why. Our Tierra del Rey entry depends on this Lorena Road entry to our community. We are located west on 441, and we are not only south of Atlantic Avenue, we are south of the demarcation of the Rio Grande. The Gold Coast Application Logistics Building, we've seen the plan, and I believe you've seen it too, because it's been mailed to you. It's a 95,000 square foot cold storage office space on only 6 acres, 6.3. Yes, only 6.3 acres. And this is a shoebox application that abuts one of our community neighbors' homes, and we heard about inches away in the yards. This shoebox application will bring in 18-wheelers per the Gold Coast letter mailed to all the residential communities, not only mine, Rio Poco, Dakota, all on this 441 corridor. Look at your Palm Beach County Code article for parking. If you accept this, you're going to be allowing 38 18-wheeler spots, and with their office space, 76 offices. And I'd ask you to go to Article 6. This is not a shoebox application. It's actually a jewelry box application. And for those of us who live here, this is going to be the gold chain that will put a noose on 441 and turn this lot into a truck stop. I can tell you, look no further than Nova Cold Storage, a 9,500 square foot cold storage food. They have 45 trucks a day going in and out for just 9,500 square feet. So yes, there will be a lot of trucks on our entry. This truck stop is really counterintuitive to the equestrian community and agricultural community of our 78 home owners. Tierra del Rey wants to be part of the solution. We continue to support and be vocal of this 441 residential corridor of the staff and south of Rio Grande. And we also think any addition down 441 that, like the GL home that continues to build residential, is continuous with what we've made. On behalf of Tierra del Rey, we will annex these properties, whether the 6-acre or the code violation between Lorena. Thank you very much for your continued support.
Good morning. My name is Dagmar Bra, 6655 O'Hara Avenue, Boynton Beach. We should be embracing all of these different lifestyles that are welcome in that area. This is an equestrian community. 5-acre lots with horses and little pocket nurseries and stuff like that. This is a lifestyle to be treasured. If this cold storage building was that necessary, that much of a requirement for the Ag Reserve in this area, would you please look at the map and see all of the industrial land on Atlantic Avenue that is available where you can already build a cold storage building like this, where it would be much more appropriate than butting it up next to an equestrian community that is absolutely beautiful and a real treasure. I just think that with you just putting in the sand, this is the line, Rio Grande, nobody goes south of that. We got Dakota, we got I'm sorry, I forgot the name of it. Rio Poco, we got beautiful communities. We drew the line, no commerce further to the south. You're even today initiating the commerce language, today. And again, somebody's gonna come in and try to move the line further south. This is not about a necessity that's needed in the Ag Reserve. This is about somebody who's really trying to get a more intense use so he can sell his property for more money. Thank you.
We have one more card, Mr. Drew Martin.
Good morning. Pleasure to see you all. Everybody looks nice. Drew Martin, I'm with the Loxhatchee Group of the Sierra Club, and we oppose this. And, you know, traffic is such an issue in the Ag Reserve. And 18-wheelers, and you talk about school kids trying to cross the road and people dropping their kids off for school. Really? You want to put 18-wheelers in the mix? Then you have all these beautiful communities, the horse communities, the people with the beautiful houses and the big, nice areas, do they want to listen to 18-wheelers? And you know what refrigerated 18-wheelers sound like. And you know they're all going to get there as early in the morning as they can for their pickups. And it's going to sound, well, it'll be a truck stop, and it's going to sound like a truck stop, and it's going to look like a truck stop. And you can imagine what that's going to make due to the property values and quality of life of the people who live there. So I think that this is really what the purpose of this commission is to be a backstop to prevent bad ideas from starting. And this is why you have a comprehensive plan, and you have zoning, and you have all this, because it prevents people from just doing really dumb things. This is just a really dumb idea. It's not needed. It doesn't fit in with the needs of the area. You don't see groups of people here asking you to do this. And everybody here is mostly telling you not to do it. So we're just asking you to just, look at the reality. This is not a good idea, and it's not a good plan. Please do not move forward. Thank you.
And that would be it for cards. I do have one non-speaking card, Lorna Wallach, and she's opposed.
All right, Vice Mayor, you're recognized.
Thank you. There are no more cards?
That's it.
Oh, thank you very much.
Well, just on this topic.
This is an interesting concept because there are no farmers here. That's why I asked if there are any more cards. Farming needs refrigeration. And I took a visit over at Peril Farms. They produce a lot of vegetables and fruits, and they have their own storage. They have a cold storage for transport. I don't see any farmers here who are coming to me and us and saying we need cold storage. At one point, not that very long ago, we had a packing plant. I think somebody here asked about a packing plant. We had a packing plant, still there, it's in disuse, and that's on the corner of Clintmore and 441. It was Thomas's packing plant, and it was there since, I don't know, I'd say before I was born, but probably not. It is not in use anymore because Thomas's is gone. Thomas has no more agricultural interests along that lines. I question this, and I really like the applicants, and I think that you're in good business, and I think you're good businessmen. But what I question is this. It's location, location, location. I don't see any farmers here who are going to take their produce over to this storage area for refrigeration. And there are no farmers here today that we're going to come up and say, please, commissioners, we need that storage, that refrigeration there, at that location, minutes from people's residences. We have the residents. We have the people here who live there, and they don't want it. I don't see any need to put something in an area where, one, it's not needed, and two, it's not wanted. There are trucks that are going to go in and out of that. Come on. You can't, we don't need to push this to the next level. I think staff has enough work. You've already denied it. There's going to be trucks coming in and out, big trucks, on 441, in an area that's really residential and equestrian and there's not a big lot of farms there that I can see, or that the farmers want it today. Planning Council has denied it. There's a reason it was unanimously denied. And these are people that we all chose to be on this commission, and they denied it. Our staff denied it. It's a good idea, but the wrong location. We need to put refrigerated storage where we have the fruits and vegetables that will be transported there, and then from there they go, I guess, to Publix or Fresh Market or wherever they go, or maybe to Mexico or Georgia. I don't know, but not this location. And so I don't, even though I appreciate the idea, I don't think it's the right location, It's been denied by the people who we chose to be on the planning council. It's been denied by our staff, and I just can't support it in light of everybody who does not want it, and no one who has come up to say that they need it, they want it, and they want us to put it at that location. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Barnett, and then Commissioner Baxter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I have your permission, I'd like to ask Mr. Gentile a few questions.
Of course.
Thank you. Thank you, George. We heard from Commissioner Sachs about the need for a storage facility like this. Can you explain the need for a storage facility and if there's any type of facility like this available in Palm Beach County?
We heard the Vice Mayor indicate that Thomas's is closed. And you've gotten even letters from farms that are even outside the area looking for those locations, not on the specific farms in this area. We heard from the planning commissioners, they were conflicted, some of them, because they knew the need is there for this type of use and support to the farming community. And we just feel that this is a good use for this location.
So when Thomas is closed, there will be no other comparable facility for cold storage?
At this time, I
in
don't
Palm Beach
believe
County?
there's any other facilities in this specific areas, yes.
Okay, why here? Why this location specifically? Is there a need for this facility?
It's a property that's there now. And it's the owner that owns the property. This is his business, and this is what he would like to do on that property.
What's he doing with the property now?
What's that?
What is he doing with the property now?
Right now, it's not being used at all. There was a landscape business on it that was closed up. And of course, we couldn't put the landscape business back there because it's doesn't have the commerce land use at this point. So he can't even do the landscape business like his neighbor.
Thank you. I have just two more
Yeah,
questions.
yes.
There was discussion about traffic and the big rigs that would be parked here or moving through this facility. I think when you came to my office, it was mentioned maybe 2 or 3 a day. Is that accurate?
That's what my client is indicating, that he'll have 2 to 3 a day transporting those items out of the area.
Is there any reason for us to believe that that number will increase over time?
I couldn't answer that question.
I'm only asking because I'm looking at the graphic that you provided, and I see there are 2 trucks in the simulated, or the graphic here, but it looks like there's sufficient parking for many more than just 2 or 3 trucks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a graphic that was just conceptual design.
Okay. So other than what you're telling us here today, are there any assurances that you can give us that traffic will not increase?
I think that your staff could work that out when we come in for the final applications and the site aspect of it.
I appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome. Commissioner Baxter, no? Can you condition the number of trips? Is that conditional?
Yeah, that has, typically it's related to meeting policy 35D, where we've had a limitation of the number of trips, but there have been conditions that have done that.
All right.
Or square footage cap. There are, various intensity type conditions that can be placed.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. I don't see any other lights. Commissioner Bernard, you're recognized.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to transmit this item.
We have a motion from Commissioner Bernard to transmit.
I apologize, it's initiation. Yes.
To initiate, thank you. And our attorney is about ready to jump out of his chair. A little levity is good. Okay, so this would be to initiate item 4A1 Gold Coast. We have a motion by Commissioner Bernard.
Second.
A second by Commissioner Baxter. Any further discussion on this item? Just before, well, go ahead. Is Darren, is that?
No, sorry. I'm good.
Okay. All right. All right. Seeing no other discussion, all in favor?
Mr. Mayor, could we take a roll call? Because I'm against it. No.
Well, you'll have an opportunity to be
Thank
against
you
it.
so much. Thank you.
Okay. This is just the initiation, which will allow staff to bring this item in and further review. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
That motion carries 6-1 with Vice Mayor Sachs in opposition. And to the applicant, and to the public to be aware that, again, as we stated earlier, initiation doesn't mean there's any approvals coming. This will allow staff to further examine this and bring it back. And you can hear some of the concerns that both the community and our board is expressing. All right, thank you. Moving on. Let's go to item 4A2, another text initiation, now that we have the full understanding of text initiation.
And again, we will begin with a presentation by the applicant, followed by Brian Davis with the Planning Division.
Good morning. My name is Jennifer Morton with J. Morton Planning and Landscape Architecture, and I appreciate the opportunity to present the comprehensive plan text amendment for Bednar Farms. The Bednar family has been farming in Palm Beach County for 3 generations. The 3 brothers are still in the farming business: Steve, Charlie, and Bruce. Their latest farming enterprise is the Bednar's Farm Fresh Market, and I'm really proud to be able to present this project to you today. If you haven't been to Bednar's yet, I highly recommend it. We have a text amendment. There are 2 requests. One is for a definition for agricultural marketplace. There's a definition in the zoning code. We're requesting to place it in the comprehensive plan. The second is to allow an agricultural marketplace within an AGR MUPD preserve area. In your staff report, you have the specific text language. It's also on the screen where we're adding the definition for agricultural marketplace, and we're adding 1 sentence to the allowable uses within an AGR MUPD to include an agricultural marketplace. The property is located about halfway between Boynton Beach Boulevard and Atlantic Avenue on State Road 7. This is a view of the marketplace. State Road 7 is on the south side of the aerial, and Lee Road is on the right. It's looking west. You can see the agricultural nature of the marketplace. It's fully integrated in with the farming operation that currently takes place on the Bednar Farms. This marketplace actually adds a high value added to the agricultural uses that are currently existing on the property. In addition to the marketplace, Bednar's doesn't just sell their own produce, they sell produce from farmers throughout South Florida. And not just fruits and vegetables, but they also sell citrus from Indian River County. They sell honey from our bee farmers. So it truly is a local enterprise that supports our agricultural uses in Palm Beach County. The other thing you may be familiar with is Bednar's does a lot of community outreach, especially at the marketplace. In fact, they partner with the Palm Beach County school system, and they have a lot of the classes have a field trip to Bednar's Market as well as the Locks Wildlife Refuge. So if you have any children in the school program, they may have had a field trip taking them to the Bednar's Market. And it's great because when they see their parents buying fruits and vegetables at the grocery store, they actually go out and learn that those fruits and vegetables are actually grown here in Palm Beach County. Also, they have the pumpkin patch every fall and offer a U-Pick for that's open to the public for families to pick their own strawberries and to really get back to what it means to farm in Palm Beach County. So the specific text request, if it is initiated and ultimately adopted by the board, would allow the Bednars to take the property that they own on the north side, where we have a conservation easement, and locate it on the property on the south side. It's a simple move of the conservation easement. So what does that look like? You can see the market outlined here in yellow. This is the land on the south side that the Bednars own and farm. And there currently exists a conservation easement on that property on the west side of the site. If the text amendment is initiated and adopted by the board, it would allow for the marketplace to also have a conservation easement on the property. So now I'm going to show you some ideas for their long-term planning for the farming operation. If the board initiates this text amendment, in the future we will be coming back before you and requesting commerce on the 2 parcels identified there in red. But that is not the specific request that's before you today. The specific request is for the text amendment to allow the marketplace to be within an AGR MUPD preserve. Staff is recommending approval of this initiation, and Planning Commission unanimously supported the initiation of this request. I'm here to answer any questions that you may have.
I don't see any questions at this time. Mr. Davis, you are recognized.
Thank you. I'll let them bring this up. I'm going to try and trim this down since Mrs. Morton went through a lot of it. But again, this is initiation. You've already heard what initiation is. This is the first blush of, do you want to have staff go and do the work? And you've also heard from the applicant that there would be corresponding site-specific amendments if this is initiated. So it is to initiate amendments to the future land use element and to the introduction and administration element, just to allow for this use. We've talked about the location. I want to be very clear, though. This has had a level of policy discussion before by the board back in 2012. There was a workshop on the Ag Reserve. Ag Reserve workshops are not new, but as we've looked at refinements to the Ag Reserve, this was one of the first concepts that was explored beyond the limits of the master plan. The board said in 2012 it was appropriate to establish a green market in the Ag Reserve, but it had to be only in straight Ag Reserve zoned land, which has got a much less restrictive allowance for what could occur. And the idea was accessory uses to bona fide agriculture were acceptable, and a marketplace sufficiently constrained was appropriate. It was not a commercial use. It was accessory to bona fide agriculture. So that was what happened. The board directed it. Code amendment was done. And in 2013, it got the zoning approval for the Bednar Marketplace. So the board had the option to look at it then. It was done to allow it here, but not in a preserve, which has a much, much more narrowly defined allowable set of uses. What you're being asked is to effectively reconsider it. Is it appropriate now that we have this? And that was the basis for how we got to the original approval. Now they're asking simply, does this belong in a preserve or not? So the applicant also went over that they already own land that is to the west. To the west, it is in preserve. All of those green areas are current AGR preserves. And so that's the accessory, or the land that it is accessory to the marketplace. So this piece is not. The proposal is that it would. You've heard about the potential future commerce in place. So it's that swap. This is all of that I just went through, but the specific code requirements, Ag Reserve District only, must be accessory. It allows for ag products only in a very, very limited amount of other commercial type uses, you know, like sandwiches or whatever, things that are just incidental, up to 2,000 square feet, and a maximum of 24,000 square feet. So this is your code, and it has a Class A conditional use approval at zoning, which they got in 2013. So that's how we got here. Everyone, I believe, is familiar, but there's a couple of pictures. And so the assessment is that we have already done this. We've looked at it. It does expand the allowable use in the Ag Reserve MUPD preserves, not the PUD preserves. Those are different classes of preserves, but still the same general concept. It does result in, at a very high level, a no net gain in agricultural land. It's just, you've already got the marketplace that's there. you'll still have the marketplace, but you will be reducing ag land that is in preservation and exchanging it. It could result in additional parcels with commercial flu, or commerce flu. Sorry, I always want to put the "ul" on the end. And it also would require a ULDC amendment if this is initiated to ultimately bring this all through. As always, initiation gives you the opportunity to get more information, but it also does not mean that it'll come back with necessarily a recommendation of support. So for those purposes, we recommend to get you the full picture, that you initiate the amendment. That would allow all of this to come back. It would give you the better picture we discussed already on other items if it's initiated. The Planning Commission last month also recommended unanimously to initiate. And so the motions before you would be to initiate the comp plan text amendment and also to authorize the zoning staff to begin working on a ULDC amendment, which would do the corresponding changes. So it would help expedite that process. With that, I will conclude and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I don't see any lights at this time.
Mayor, I have 4 cards. Anybody have questions of staff? Okay, please. Mark Perry, Sheila Calderon, Gail Ladd, followed by Drew Martin. Name and address for the record. And you can take both podiums, please.
Mark Perry, 88 Northeast 5th Avenue, Delray Beach, and really there's nothing more for me to add, I don't think. I think the presentations by both staff and also by Jennifer speaks for itself, and I just hope you approve the initiation of the comp plan amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Didn't we just see you yesterday?
Morning. Thank you to our mayor, vice mayor, and our commissioners for allowing us all to speak today. I know you got a lot ahead of you, so I'm going to be very, very brief on this issue in particular. Number one, I happen to love Bednar's. And number two, I think it's very appropriate for what they are proposing and what they are requesting for us to allow it to go through. And thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you. I'm Gail Ladd. I'm from Jupiter, and I think I'm going to agree with what has been said so far, and we please ask that you initiate. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Drew Martin.
Good morning. I'm going to be the skunk at the garden party today. You know, I like vendors. You know, done a lot of great things. But, you know, my concern is that I don't know that this is necessary and appropriate use for preservation. And I think it opens the, you know, the door to other uses that may not be preservation as well. And I think we have to be really careful. I mean, I think that I'm concerned about the purpose of this, which is basically to change direction. And so I recommend a no vote. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all the cards I have.
Commissioner Bernard.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I would make a motion to initiate this item.
I took the words from my breath. Very good. Do we have a second? Commissioner Baxter, did you want to say something? Or Commissioner Baxter, did you want to say something? You're going to second it? Yep. Okay, very good. And I'm going to turn my own light off because I was going to do the same thing.
Well, I said it for you because you took over.
Thank you so much. So now that we have the mayor back, I'm going to leave it up to you. We've got a motion.
Vice Mayor?
So we have 2 seconds.
Yeah, can you confirm the second? There were 2 people spoke.
Sarah Baxter.
Sarah Baxter.
Right? So I think we just need a vote.
Oh. We have 2 motions in front of us. Motion, we need to do them separately, or can we do them concurrently?
I would recommend separate motions.
Okay, so this is motion, this would be the first motion to initiate the comp plan text amendments. I see no other further.
No, that's
See no further comments. All in favor, all opposed. That motion carries 7-0. All right, and next.
Vice Mayor Sachs would like to move to initiate the ULDC text amendment.
We have a motion from Vice Mayor Sacks, a second by Commissioner Marino. Any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, all in favor, all opposed, that motion carries 7-0.
Thank you.
All right. Now, moving on. We are now up to item 5A1. This is Biltmore Acres Lantana Overlay.
Okay, and we are now to the section of the agenda where we have 4 items that are up for transmittal. This first one, as you mentioned, Mayor, is Biltmore Acres Lantana Rural Enclave Overlay, and Jerry Lodge with the Planning Division will present.
Good morning, Jerry Lodge, Planning Division. This amendment is the Biltmore Acres Lantana Rural Enclave Overlay. So the intent of this amendment is to revise the future land use element to establish an overlay for an area in the urban-suburban tier. Specifically, this amendment will add a new sub-objective and related policies for the rural enclave overlay, and it will also update the special planning areas map in the comprehensive plan map series, which will delineate the boundaries of the overlay if adopted. So in 2018, the idea for creating rural enclave overlays was proposed by representatives of the Pioneer Road Property Owners Association at a separate BCC transmittal hearing for a county-initiated text amendment for an item named residential future land use designations. The request originated from concerns about proposed density requests in the area. The board adopted Ordinance 2018-31, which implemented new policies in a plan that recognize rural enclaves exist within the urban-suburban tier, and the low residential densities and agricultural uses within them contribute to the housing diversity and lifestyle choices supported by the plan. The resulting policies from that ordinance also support the continuance and preservation of these areas by establishing a framework to create rural enclave overlays within the plan. And then in 2022, the county adopted the first rural enclave overlay for the Pioneer Road area. Okay, so the board initiated this amendment on September 22nd of last year with the intent of creating a rural enclave overlay that will support the preservation of the current character of the area. The proposed overlay encompasses about 331 acres, and it's located on the north side of Lantana Road and east of the Florida Turnpike. Uses in the proposed overlay primarily consist of low-density residential and agricultural uses, and shown in this map is the proposed overlay with the red outline. And the blue outline on the southeast shows a separate amendment in process named Lantana Road Residential. That amendment is a privately proposed and site-specific future land use amendment, which is proposing to change the land use on 18 acres from LR1 to LR2, in addition to fully utilizing TDR and workforce housing density bonuses to develop 104 townhomes, just under 6 units per acre. The Lantana Road Residential Future Land Use Amendment is not a subject of this text amendment and was recently postponed by the applicant. All right, so future land use designations within the overlay are split between LR1 on the east and LR2 on the west. There's approximately 452 parcels within this area on 331 acres, which equates to an average lot size of just under 3/4 of an acre. Surrounding the overlay are low, medium, and high residential future land uses, in addition to a CLO FLU on the southwest corner of Lantana Road and Hagen Ranch Road. So the proposed sub-objective and policies for this amendment were derived from the successful implementation of the Pioneer Road Rural Enclave Overlay, and it builds on an established foundation for existing policies that were already reviewed and approved by the board. In addition, the proposed policies for this overlay will create a framework for additional rural enclave overlays should the board adopt any in the future. First is the proposed sub-objective, which you see here, and it defines the purpose of rural enclave overlays as recognizing the low-density residential character of communities within the urban-suburban tier, and that they contribute to the diversity of lifestyles and promotes continuation of agricultural uses. The proposed boundaries for the Biltmore Acres Lantana Rural Enclave Overlay are defined as Lantana Road to the south, the Fountains Country Club and Golf Course on the east, Lake Worth Drainage District, L14 Canal to the north, and a residential community known as Countrywood on the west. In addition to this policy, the boundaries of the overlay will be added to the special planning areas map in the map series of the comprehensive plan. And this policy allows additional rural enclaves to be added to the plan if the board should adopt any, by requiring only this policy to be updated by, right after A, build more acres, if there's another one right underneath of that. In addition to that, the special planning areas map will be updated as well. And lastly, I'd like to just point out that the boundaries are up to the discretion of the board and may be changed prior to adoption. The residential densities policy requires that any request to increase residential density on property within the overlay that requires board approval must be approved by at least 5 members of the board. The requirement for a supermajority approval would ensure greater consensus among the board and give an additional layer of protection to the community. And it does not affect any development rights or current land uses or zoning designations. Applicable requests that would apply to this policy would be future land use amendments, rezoning applications, transfer development rights, workforce housing bonuses, anything that would increase the residential density. In addition to that, the proposed policies also support the continuation of agricultural uses within the overlay and the retention of native vegetation. Staff's analysis finds that the proposed overlay will support the preservation of low-density residential and agricultural character of the area, which will contribute to, once again, the diverse lifestyle and housing choices we have here in the county. Staff finds that the overlay furthers goals and objectives of the comprehensive plan, consistent with applicable policies that are within it already. And in addition to that, a large majority of responding property owners are in favor of the overlay. So throughout the process, since initiation, staff has conducted extensive outreach with the community. First, we created a webpage on Planning Division's website specifically for this overlay. On the webpage, we had background information, maps, and data, and it was updated regularly to include hearing dates, links to videos from prior hearings, staff reports, etc. Let's see. We also held 2 informational meetings with the community via Zoom. So planning staff also sent 2 notices by mail to property owners in the overlay, and the most recent one included the proposed policies, today's hearing date, and a draft map of where the overlay boundaries lie. In addition to that, we also supplied a comment form so they could mail back comments of support or opposition to the overlay. In addition to those comment forms provided by staff, the community has also submitted petitions of support for the overlay, which is included in Exhibit 2 of the staff report, and a large amount of correspondence has been received since publication of this report and has been included in the add delete. And now we'll go over the responses we've received. So at the time of publication for the report and agenda, on April 6th, staff had received a declaration of support or opposition from 135 property owners. Shown here in green is support and red is opposed. And that represented a 32% response rate. 94% of those responding property owners were in favor of the overlay. Between publication and today's hearing, up until yesterday, staff had received a significant number of additional responses, mostly through a resident-led petition. The additional responses brings the total number to 280, which has increased the response rate to 66%, and 98% of those responding owners have declared support of the overlay. You may have noticed that some of the properties that were opposed in the previous map on the western side have now changed to green, and that's a result of the resident-led petition and some consensus to educate each other on what their policies are proposing. And lastly, I'd like to point out that the southeastern quadrant, the applicant for Lantana Road Residential has recently submitted comments of opposition to the overlay. So staff's recommending approval. The Planning Commission recommended approval unanimously 13-0, and the motion would be to transmit.
Commissioner Bernard, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question to staff. I think in one of the slides you stated that in the proposed boundary there's LR1 and LR2. Is that correct?
Correct. On the eastern half along Fernley and Colbright Road is LR1, and the western half known as Biltmore Acres or Biltmore Estates is LR2.
Okay, so there's both LR1 and LR2s.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right. I don't see any other lights lit at this time, so we will have public comment.
Thank you. We have 15 cards or so, so if you would all take both podiums, name and address for the record. Raymond Urias, I apologize. First, then followed by Peter Patel, Richard Grosso, and Betty Resch.
Good morning. My name is Raymond Urias, and my address is 5375 3rd Road in Lake Worth, Florida. I'm coming here basically to expose something of interest, and that is, I do indeed support leaving the overlay the way it is. When we moved there it's going to be 19 years ago. It took us almost a year and a half just to find a place that then supported what we wanted it, and prospectively, that would stay and remain. Several times there have been efforts to change it, and I understand. We live in a world and a country that is constantly evolving. But what is not evolving is land. Land remains the way it is. I was really mesmerized by seeing the transfer of time in my life, where I was 18 and now I'm 72. The structures where I travel remain the same. We disappear, we're gone. Next generations are coming into to see what we're left behind. This is critically important for you commissioners to look with a futuristic outlook. You are commanded to take care of what we have responsibly. You are elected on that premises, not just to be, a check mark. Yeah, I would like to stake the support to maintain the Biltmore overlay as it is. My family and I have lived in our peaceful community for over 18 years and have enjoyed the environment that surrounds us. For information only, the traffic is existent. We have a number of residents that have vehicles, and we have a vehicular movement there. But if anybody's interested in hearing noise, all they need to do is open the doors, and the turnpike is like an ocean. In fact, I have had people come to visit us and say, do you have an ocean nearby? Yeah, we do. We have the turnpike. And that provides, for everyone who like noise, provides enough. We don't need that in our premises, where we basically, at 5 or 6 o'clock, we close the door to the outer environment to enjoy life peacefully. We have what we always have liked as a place to reside in relative peaceful atmosphere.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Your time has expired.
I just like 2 more seconds, perhaps. This is another attempt to change Biltmore overlay. No changes need to be approved. Therefore, we respectfully request for you, elected commission, to approve the overlay and protect future generations.
Thank you.
Thank you to all of you. And I remember when I voted.
Mr. Patel, followed by Mr. Grosso, followed by Betty Resch.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Peter Patel at 7001 Lantana Road. This is the first time I am doing a public speaking, so please excuse me if in case I am not able to speak very well. The most important thing, when I started this, we started this meeting and we took an oath. It was told, or it was spoken, the future, we are over here to preserve the rights for the future generations to strive. What a future generation means, right? The next generation which is going to come and live in this area. My kids, or when I started my career, I started living in a small apartment complex, then went into a townhouse and was able to afford a house. In future, new people are going to come. The new kid who is coming out of the school and he is trying to find an apartment or a housing complex. It is very important for us to create housing units right, where people can live in. In August of last year, we have about 18 acres land, 20 acres land, and we wanted to put a developmental project. And we thought about what developmental project we can put. We can put single-family houses, we can make a lot of money, but we thought it is a very good idea of putting affordable housing, right, which is strived one of the most important thing which this entire community, this entire county is looking for, which is affordable housing. Right now, just the statistics, 2010, there were 1.3 million people living in Palm Beach County. 2022, last year, I checked, it was 1.5 million people living. That is 250,000 people moved into this county. The rents in the community for two-bedroom apartment was about $1,300. Right now, it is $2,300. For a housing unit, to buy a small townhouse, it used to be $200,000, $300,000. Right now, we are paying $500,000, right? So idea is to create affordable housing, which a lot of people can afford it to. And what we are asking from? We are asking from LR1 to LR2. Low density comes up to LR3, maybe LR4. And where we are surrounded with? We are surrounded by LR3, LR5, LR6, high commercial, residential, and we are talking about east of 95. We are not even talking of Turnpike. We are not talking about somewhere in 441 or wherever we are discussing or we are moving our front foot to. One line, if one route is Fernley Avenue, another is Colbright Avenue, and then rest of the thing is LR2 already. Now, how can I ask if I'm living in a glass house, saying that, hey, you cannot build another glass house next door? I know that we are in constraint of time, and we are mindful about it. We just wanted to create affordable housing into the community and be a part of the solution than a problem, and hopefully the commissioner will understand that what we are trying to do over here. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Oh, excuse me, Vice Mayor Sachs has a question.
Mr. Patel? Could you come back up? I have a question for you. Looking at the map, would your project, what avenue would your project have an access to?
Our entrance is going to be on Lantana Road, and the red parcel we are seeing, that is where our project we are proposing. It is going to have a gated community, kind of a gated house. We are going to have a clubhouse. We are going to have a child care center inside for the residents who are living in. We are going to have a dog park where people can have their open area and other things. So the entrance, to answer specific, is going to be on Lantana Road moving inside, which is not going to affect anybody on the left side, on LR1, LR2 kind of.
Would there be any, if I could, Mayor, would there be any access into the residence, which is designated, I guess, by green on the map? What type of barrier would you propose?
Maybe a fire exit, for the fire trucks to rotate out in case of that, but no, most of the entrance is going to be on Lantana Road.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Mayor, members of the commission, my name is Richard Grosso, 6919 West Broward Boulevard and Plantation. I've been a land use attorney in South Florida for well over 30 years. I've done a lot of ag reserve and other work in this county over the years. It's been a few years, though, since I've been back. It's good to be back. I represent Carol Reeve and Chris White. We strongly support the overlay. They are residents out here. As any community matures, like you certainly are, you move towards things like this, site-specific, area-specific planning, not just one size fits all. This is what you do when you've got an area that's unique, that offers a unique quality of lifestyle that's fast disappearing. You're not changing anyone's or taking anyone's property right whatsoever. Them that bought have what they bought. You're simply setting the clear expectations for future requests to increase what they got. That's all you're doing here. One project can ruin an entire community. If you've got horses out here, you've got that rural kind of lifestyle, you start putting up apartment buildings right next to that, you have completely ruined the entire thing. That's the value and the purpose and the function of an overlay like this. You cannot exempt any of the property owners. You're either doing it right, you're putting the overlay on all the properties, or you don't do it. So you can't exempt anyone. It's got to be the entire community to protect the entire thing. Every project says, I want to do this for, we've got population coming. You would pave over every part of your county if that's the only thing. You've already accounted for that. Your comprehensive plan has looked to the future. You've decided where that future population should be going, should be getting concentrated. This is not one of those areas. So that argument will always be made. But what you're doing now is you are protecting very specific, unique, fast vanishing, I can't live like this anywhere else kind of lifestyles. That's why you do an overlay like this. Your staff has done an incredible amount of outreach and great work on this. Frankly, the language of this is the least you could do. There were lots of proposals. We made some of them ourselves for much more specific, hard-hitting language. But this is what the Planning Council has unanimously supported. This helps move forward and set an expectation for future requests, and we strongly support it. We hope you will all strongly support it, send it to the state. I don't think this is the kind of plan amendment the state will have the slightest concerns with. They will say this is fine. They will say this is very good planning. They will say go ahead and adopt it. That's what we're here asking you to do. Be happy to answer any questions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Grosso. I have a question for you. Are you familiar with our Pioneer Road overlay?
Only in the most general terms, sir.
Okay. Because we did exclude certain properties out of the overlay, those specifically that were on Jog Road, with the acknowledgement and understanding that what developed on Jog Road would be different than what was in the interior of the neighborhood. So, and I notice up on the would be the southwestern corner. I mean,
I'm familiar certainly with this one, but you know the concern here is what that does to the adjacent properties on the other side of it, sir.
I understand. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Bernard, you're recognized.
Mr. Mayor, just to follow up on your question, just to staff, since with the Pioneer Overlay District, we were able to create a boundary, you know, what would it look like if we're able to still create the overlay district, but create a boundary and exempt certain properties out of that overlay district?
So the ultimate boundary of the overlay is full discretion of the board. So you're correct. Originally, what was proposed for Pioneer brought that boundary all the way to Jog Road. The board, I believe it was 3 properties closest to Jog, roughly, that were exempted. So if the board chose to say that there was a certain level of lots from Lantana they did not want to include, that is certainly the purview, or currently as proposed, it would extend the boundary to Lantana Road. But
okay. I know for me during this meeting, I'd love to figure out a way for us to create the overlay district and to exempt certain properties and create some type of a boundary that would allow us to create the overlay and to exempt some folks out. But at the end of the day, whatever that comes in front of us, the board gets the chance to decide whether or not we're going to approve anything. So, you know, it still would be our legislative right to deny or approve any projects that comes in front of us.
Correct.
Commissioner Woodward and then Vice Mayor Sachs.
Thank you, Mayor. The entrance to his property is on Lantana Road. Is there also a road that goes up on the eastern border of this, which looks like maybe next to a golf course? Is there another road that can have entrance to?
That is a canal.
That's a canal. Oh, it's a canal.
Yes.
So the only way into that property is Lantana?
There's Lantana, and then Fernley Road is on the west side of the property.
Which goes into the Biltmore community?
Correct.
Okay.
There you go, there's the canal.
Vice Mayor, you're recognized.
Again with staff. The Lantana Road, if I recall, is one of those accessory roads that goes from the Turnpike to I-95?
Looks like something that borders the top.
It's a question.
I'm sorry, Vice Mayor, could you repeat that
That's
question?
okay. Lantana Road is a major artery that goes from the Turnpike to I-95?
Yes, actually it goes over Florida's Turnpike and extends actually slightly west of State Road 7 and then goes east past 95 all the way to US 1.
So,
yeah.
up to the beach.
I think Ocean
My
Avenue's
boy
the
over
bridge,
here
but close.
knows
Yeah,
it's
almost to
got
the intercoastal,
beach.
yes.
Never taken Lantana to the beach. Anyways, moving along with what Commissioner Bernard was talking about, it is possible to do an overlay that would exempt certain properties that front on this major artery.
You're correct.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Oh, and I should recognize, we have the mayor of Lake Worth, City of Lake Worth Beach here, but you're here as an attorney this morning.
Yes, sir, and thank you. I appreciate it. And my name is Betty Resch. My office address is 521 Lake Avenue in downtown Lake Worth Beach. I've been working with the community since 2007. I have never worked with people as devoted to their community as I have with this group. They are solid in their belief that they have a very unique lifestyle and they're trying to preserve it. Yes, you could change the boundaries, but if you look at the red, you would be surrounding those parcels with a big apartment complex. Mr. Patel bought the property knowing what the restrictions were. Yes, he will, if this goes forward, there's going to be no restriction about whether it's going to be low-income housing or workforce housing. The argument about the need for housing, and certainly I understand that because I face that every day, but we have a need in this county to preserve the very few rare examples of an agricultural overlay. These people have horses. There's a rare fruit tree farm there. These people use this land as it was meant to do. And the parcel that Mr. Patel has purchased was a fruit packing company. So if the other group is looking for a place to, there's one. But we're asking to preserve it. This would allow the presentation of the unique lifestyle that we have so little of in Palm Beach County. An exclusion of part of that would just those folks on Fernley Road. Fernley Road is the easternmost road that goes, which would be bordered on the red. And the popular support that these folks have for their community is overwhelming. We are asking for the entire boundary to be not excluded, the entire boundary to be included, to have a continuity of use in that area. Mr. Patel, if you do that exclusion, he would have no restriction about it. He could do whatever he, with zoning and stuff, but he would be able to do whatever he came. A few years ago, there was a proposal by a developer to put in lots and lots of townhouses, and the community met with them, and they realized that the people were so committed to it that it was not the place that they wanted to put their project. So again, I've worked with these people since 2007. They are devoted to their lifestyle. There's quite a few of them that have filled out cards but are not speaking because they know that having 20 people say the same thing to a Board of County Commissioners or a city commissioner is boring and redundant, so we've spared you that. But we are asking for the inclusion of the entire property for the transmittal to be approved this morning. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I have Christina White, followed by Carol Reeve, David Kale? Excuse me? Thank you. Followed by Craig Oberwidger.
Hi, my name is Christina White, and I live and own at 5374 Fernley Road and also 5479 Fernley Road. The area of Fernley, Colbright, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, Seabreeze, Canal, Coconut, Overlook, and Pine Tree area is all agricultural reserve. It's agricultural residential. This area is unique. It has open farms or open fields for horses, cows, sheep, goats, chickens, and dogs. And of course, we have birds and bees and snakes. There are more than 400 families that will rely on this overlay being transmitted today. An agricultural overlay is important to protect low density and keep our area as a rural enclave. pressure from the developers trying to ruin our area is there. This issue has been in 06, 2019, and now 2023. We want horses, not houses. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Carol Reeve, and I live on 5714 Fernley Road. I'll try not to be redundant because mostly everything's been hit on. I've had the chance to meet with most of you in person, and you realize how important it is to our community. We're over 55 years old and have been somehow over that time surrounded by development, but managed to maintain the fabric and the integrity of our neighborhood. And most of us have longstanding businesses and independent nurseries and horse farms, and we all contribute to the community. And it's really important for the residents there to maintain that lifestyle because we depend on the larger lots to be able to park the work vehicles, have our houses, run our home-based businesses, and those type of things would otherwise be excluded from an HOA community. And so we're trusting that the county will act as our HOA and approve this overlay to maintain the fabric of our neighborhood that's been there for 55 years. Thank you.
David, followed by Craig, followed by Ralph, Junta, and Suzanne Pauley.
My name is David Khalil. I was born and raised in Palm Beach County. I moved to Fernley Road over 30 years ago. And this is our third time in the last 15 years in front of county commissioners fighting against zero lot line, fighting against the builders. We all moved there on our street for the same reason, so you could have property, so you could park whatever you wanted in your yard, no zero lot line, no HOA, none of the rules that go with every other place. Everyone there is there, like I said, for the same reason. Horses, cows, dogs, pigs have their own fruit trees, and the developers just keep coming back time and time and time again, okay? Nobody on our street has any problem with developers developing. Just build one house per acre and a quarter like everybody else on our street, or one house per 2 acres, or one house per 5 acres, okay? Mr. Patel wants to put in 100 and something houses. It got denied from the county commission a few years ago for 60 something houses. We dealt with D.R. Horton. They wanted to put in 50 something houses. All the traffic will come onto Fernley Road. There is no exit onto Lantana Road. They can't put an exit on Lantana Road because there is a light at Lantana and Hagen Ranch and Fernley Road. There is no way for them to get onto Lantana Road. Where are they going to come out and make a U-turn to go to the east? They're all going to come on to Lantana Road. It doesn't matter what he thinks or says. All their traffic will be on our road. There's no way you can set the light up to have people coming from that corner and going on to Lantana Road without coming on Fernley Road. And everybody on our street voted one way except for his piece of property, okay? And he has an Airbnb at that piece of property. The farthest one to the north is the red one. That's his Airbnb, and he rents it out as a country setting. But now he wants to take the rest of the property and make it into townhouses and zero lot line, and that's ridiculous. He can find another place to build. Thank you.
Sir?
Thank you. Craig Oberweger, rep.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Craig Oberweger for the Lantana Land Trust. Office address is 2101 Northwest Corporate Boulevard, Boca Raton, Florida. We've heard a lot today about development. We've heard a lot today about how there are home-based businesses at this proposed property where overlays. What we haven't heard about is where are these people supposed to live? Yes, we are looking to raise from an LR1 to an LR2. In fact, most of the property over there is LR2 already. It abuts to an LR2. It abuts to LR3 and LR4. An overlay is an unnecessary hurdle. It is more than a metaphorical. It's more than metaphorical. It's a good plan based in studies, good public policy, in line with Florida's Live Local Act, and there's reasons why. Currently, the land is suitable and appropriate. It has frontage and access to Lantana Road. It allows for higher densities by that alone, and it will satisfy rapid growth. It provides alternate housing and attainability for home ownership in an area that needs it desperately. That will maintain the pride of the area that these other homeowners do want. It allows access to schools and jobs. It allows access for the aging population who want to downsize and stay in their neighborhoods. It allows for police, firemen, teachers, nurses, bless you,
Thank you.
to live where they work, to play where they live, to worship where they live. The planned development also includes a child care center for the residents, a workstation with high internet for the residents, and a basketball court and play area for their kids. It is absolutely what the area needs. It allows access, the Lantana Road access will not disturb traffic patterns to the extent that you've been told here today. There's been studies that we've had and will be presented with when we go for zoning. This is a simple, straightforward, good use of property. It is good public policy. It is needed, and it will be welcomed by the people that need to move here and live here and work here. That's really all I have, and I'm available for questions.
We normally don't respond to.
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
You must be Susan.
Yeah, I'm Susan Pauley,
Okay.
10865 Barn Road in Lake Worth. And you've heard a lot of really convincing and interesting discussion about this, but I want you to hear something from somebody who lives out west, okay? I'm like the other side of 441, but I am familiar with Biltmore Acres. And it, like Heritage Farms, need your help in protecting the rural enclave that past commission's legacy had established. All right, Biltmore is constantly being laid siege to by developers and an ever-increasing, rapidly advancing force of greedy developers who really don't care about Palm Beach County or the lives of the people they run over, okay? It's a beautiful place. If you've never been there, you owe it to yourselves to at least just go drive down Fernley Road. It looks like Florida did 20 years ago, and it should be allowed to remain. So that's all I wanted to do, was ask you to please pass this overlay and save Biltmore. Thank you.
Thank you. Ralph Junta, if you're here.
Good morning. Thank you for saying my name right. That's very rare. I've been going to Excalibur Fruit Tree Nursery that's on Fernley Road for at least a decade, and recently have also met my friend Josie, who runs a horse rehabilitation farm on the same road. And hearing Mr. Patel's argument and his lawyers that we need more housing is absolutely ridiculous. If you just drive around, you'll see that that's absolutely not the truth, especially considering that I'm coming from 7375 Southampton Terrace on Lawrence Road, which formerly, when I was a child, some 20 years ago, there was all citrus, all orange groves in that area, if you remember. And so the disappearing of natural spaces is an extreme problem, and so what would happen in that space with 0 lot lines and 100+ homes would further to just erase what is so rare these days. I spent quite a long time, the last 10 years, living and visiting the Amazon rainforest of Peru, and seeing that rainforest being carted away little by little and seeing also the connection between South Florida and the Amazon, believe it or not, there's a huge one. We have such a little thing left, and so seeing it happen before my eyes in Peru, it feels like I'm in Florida hundreds of years ago. So the little bit that we have to defend so sadly before people and trying to explain to them why we shouldn't do this, it's absolutely ludicrous. And when I explain this to the people that I live with down there in the Amazon, they can't really understand it, you know? So I just want to speak for all these people. If you could just listen to the residents, everyone, 98% in support is a huge number. And so it's quite obvious that the people want this overlay. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Gail Ladd, Sheila Calderon, Inca Lucas. Erica, I can't read your writing, sorry. Followed by Drew Martin. Please take either one of the podiums.
Good morning again. I'm Gail Ladd from Jupiter, Florida, and I overwhelmingly understand that the residents support this overlay. And it looks to me that the developer, of course, wants to help with the housing shortage, but this is not the place. These people who live out there, and I wish I did, it sounds wonderful, and I'm going to go visit. It just looks like, as this former person just said, it looks like Florida a long time ago, and I think we're just getting too overcrowded, and that can't be helped, I know, but we need to concentrate our housing not in this particular area. I really ask that you support the overlay. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Calderon.
It's still good morning. Sheila Calderon, Green Acres, Florida. I am here to support the need to protect the area as a natural area, allow for the agriculture, the wildlife, and the domesticated animals that exist there now with the families that are bought there and are happy there. We cannot continue to impose development on those areas. There are additional concerns as this will create the need for additional services such as schools and fire departments and expansion of the roads, etc. So that is an additional concern that, of course, will cost the taxpayers money. Clearly, there are concerns by the residents. I've heard them today, and I heard them once before when I went to the Planning Commission. I think the residents should be recognized for what they purchased in that area for, and have been living there and want to continue the lifestyle. And as such, I ask that you please approve this overlay. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Erica Lucas, 5589 Fernley Road. I am for the overlay. We know that Florida has always protected the ag, and non-ag does not fit with ag. And I can say this personally because a non-ag person came onto my property and murdered one of my horses. That red north block just 2 weeks ago, rented by Airbnb people, they were 5 drunk people beating up baby cows. We had to have the cops and everybody down there, animal care and control. And we all know that there is no entrance on Lantana Road. We'd have 150 and their spouses and their kids and their this and that. There'd be 200 cars on Fernley and strangers walking up and down Fernley. It doesn't fit. I teach horseback riding to children, special needs. I want to read a letter very quickly. I don't have much time. The birds chirping, the sun shining bright. I pulled myself up. There I was, ecstatic 7-year-old, sitting on top of a 1,200-pound wild-spirited creature. Horseback riding was always a dream of mine, and I was living it. The barn was beautiful, home to many horses, dogs, cats, chickens, just the place for an animal lover like me. I viewed it as the most amazing place on earth, but little did I know it would change and save my life. Growing up, I've had difficulty calling a place home. At this point, I have lived with my mother, a foster family, my grandparents, and then my father with his newly established family. After my father's identity was revealed, I moved to Florida. Although this house was now mine, I never felt at home. I always felt I was an outsider, a disruption to their family. I became very reserved, not feeling comfortable enough to express myself. When I went to the barn, tranquility overcame me. I started going every weekend just to fulfill this wonderful feeling. Years later, it became a home, away from home. The girls there, my sisters, the owner, my mother. She fed us on weekends and was generous enough on our birthdays and holidays. When I got older, the barn was my escape. I started working there, making a few dollars, cleaning stalls. Eventually, I started giving lessons on weekends, which improved my social skills. At my house, I never spoke. The second I entered the barn, my inner personality revealed itself. I became responsible. The barn is now a regular job for me. I am responsible for any task I am given. Working with kids, including the disabled, is the main part of my job. Putting a smile on their faces warms my heart. I learned how to work with different individuals and how to depict their learning styles. I have acquired independence. I now work for my own money, pay my own bills, and continue to complete my schoolwork without any assistance. Without the barn, my personality wouldn't have been able to break out of the dark hole in which it was hiding. The qualities I have gained and the experiences I have had working with kids is what pushed me towards becoming a psychologist. I want to be able to help children going through perilous times and help them find their happiness. I want to provide them with what the barn has given me: strength, support, and an escape. Saying this again, that red does not fit with the
Thank
agriculture.
you very much, ma'am.
Thank you.
Again, Drew Martin with the Loxahatchee Group of the Sierra Club. You know, I really think it's important to give the people who live in an area the right to make decisions about where they live. And I was discouraged this morning on one vote because a lot of the people lived in an area asked you not to support something and you supported it. And I think that's unfortunate because it really makes people not have confidence in our democracy. So I really think, you know, you have the neighborhood, they went to the trouble to work with your staff, 98% of them. You also have some extremely eminent legal people here, Richard Grosso, Betty Resch. They probably have more legal experience than everybody in this room. They're both in favor of it. So I just think that I hope this will be an easy decision for you, that you won't have to ponder this and that you will vote yes and support all these fine residents and create this overlay to protect their way of life. Thank you.
Thank you. We have two more cards. Monique Thompson, followed by Scott Zucker.
Good morning. My name is Monique Thompson. I am born and raised in Palm Beach County. I owned a property at 5729 Fernley. I planned to build, and I opposed the overlay because I didn't want any more rules and restrictions on when I planned to build. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir.
Good morning. My name is Scott Zucker. I'm the president of Audubon Everglades. I live in Wellington, and thank you for allowing us to speak here today. As probably many of you know, there is a tremendous decline in wildlife in this country. Birds have declined 30% over the last 40 years. That's approximately 3 billion less birds that we have. Bees have declined by 90%. Butterflies are declining by 1.6% a year since 1977. Mammals have declined 25% in this country. Areas like this overlay that's being proposed protect all these species. If we continue to get rid of rural lands, we are going to be also continue to be getting rid of all of these important species that are important to our lives. So I ask you to support this overlay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's the end of our speaking cards. We have 13 additional comment cards that did not wish to speak. 10 of them were in favor and 3 were opposed.
Thank you. All right, Commissioner Bernard, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a struggle for me because what I'm struggling with is, you know, every time someone wants to build, if someone wants to build something and the residents doesn't want it, then somebody wants to create an overlay. I think that creating these overlay districts should be a high burden for us to, because you know, I don't know anything about this project that's being proposed, and I'm not considering that at all. But I believe that, you know, the board can make that decision on whether or not it's going to approve the project or not. What I'm concerned about is just every community now will create an overlay district, and so in that way, you know, it takes away the right from us to make some of these decisions, and that's my struggle, and I'd love to hear from the board to kind of like figure out how do we want to proceed with every time that we're going to make a decision on something, someone's going to say, hey, we want to create an overlay district. Like the Pioneer Farms, we worked really hard to really create that. And is this going to be something that we're going to do now in the future? Every time someone doesn't want something, they want an overlay district. So that's my struggle.
Thank you. Commissioner Baxter and then Commissioner Woodward.
Thank you, Mayor. I think it's sometimes hard for people to realize what's been happening, and I think we've seen it a lot lately with code enforcement when you try commingling two different lifestyles. And it really was of concern that there could be or potentially no entrance off of Lantana at all, where other places that I feel maybe that would have changed this for me. But I'm in favor of really keeping this the way it is, because when you go putting potential development of higher densities into an area of lower densities that are used to a certain lifestyle, and I said this before, whether it's the smell of the animals, whether it's the noises, whether it's anything, those new residents then get angry, and then they start complaining, and then issues start arising. And I just think we should learn from the past that, I mean, I believe it was an LR1, correct me if I'm wrong, that's right next to this. The two lifestyles just, when I agree we need workforce housing, this just, to me, isn't the place, and having these people drive through their neighborhood to get there just makes it that much worse. And I know there was another comment, so I'll reserve anything further.
Commissioner Woodward, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I too struggle with the overlay just because, well, I'm new to this and trying to understand the purpose of an overlay. And during my agenda review, I would like some clarification on this. If we were to pass this as is, it doesn't mean that these other properties can't come back to us for development. It has to have a 5-2 vote, so like a supermajority vote, where I guess would be the biggest part of this, that it's increasing the hurdle slightly for development. Is that true?
That is correct. Actually, it's only 2 sentences. I'll just read it, what is in the staff report. So this would be a new policy associated with this rural enclave overlay for this location. It says the county encourages low residential densities within the rural enclave overlay. Applications requiring approval by the Board of County Commissioners that result in a higher residential density, including but not limited to future land use amendments, residential rezoning, transfer of development rights program, and workforce housing program bonuses shall require approval by at least 5 members of the Board of County Commissioners.
Okay.
So it doesn't preclude, it just adds that a slight additional hurdle.
So if these projects were to come back, I mean, they still could come back through this process. It just raises the hurdle slightly for them. Okay. Well, for me, that's a 98% in support. That's a very respectable number. So for me, I would approve this. But again, I don't like the idea of the overlay, but in all honesty, after some of what we experienced yesterday, I also don't want to start neighborhood feuds. So if we could maybe avoid some of that we are starting to see already, where different lifestyles do not commingle. And if this is a way to maybe help with that in the future, I don't know. I am still very torn on it, but it looks like a lot of work has been put into this, so I would support this one.
Vice Mayor, you're recognized, and then we'll have Commissioner Marino.
Thank you, Mayor. People support it, we should do it. We need to be sure that that we don't preclude any other uses for that section that boards on a very big transportation route. Maybe we need to get the packing plan in here, you know? It seemed like it, I don't know what happened to it, but I think it was okay with the lifestyle of the folks there. But the bottom line is, if the people want it, and I think that we should, even though it's not my district, I think we should represent what the people want and give them the overlay.
Thank you. Commissioner Marino, then Commissioner Barnett.
Thank you. Worst case scenario on this 18 acres of land that's in the red there, 18 and a half acres, those fall under the LR1. Are there TDRs available to them? And if so, what would be actually the end result with the LR1 and TDRs?
So when you add in the maximum TDRs and workforce housing bonus, they could do up to 52 units on the 18 acres with the LR1 designation.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Commissioner Barnett, you're recognized.
I'm not going to go over ground that's already been covered. I'd like to make a motion to transmit the Biltmore Acres Lantana Rural Enclave Overlay.
We have a motion by Commissioner Barnett and a second by Commissioner Woodward. All right. So as somebody whose district has the overlay in place, here's where, and I support that rural enclave, but here's where I sort of have problems with this, is it includes, because we're calling it a rural enclave, and you've got on the northeast or northwest corner of it, you have, and I don't understand, and maybe staff can explain how LR2, how you have all those smaller lots in an LR2, because I don't understand, and we didn't have TDRs back then when those were built. We didn't have any bonus densities. How did that happen? And why are we calling that a rural enclave? I mean, I think I looked at some of those lots, they were 6,000 square feet. And nothing wrong with that, but that to me is not a rural area. It looks, to me, very suburban or even urban. I think some of those lots are smaller than what you find near downtowns.
So one thing I'll get to your second question in a moment about the parcel sizes, but looking at the policy and kind of the areas that are even applicable for these rural enclave overlays, because I know there was discussion about, could these start popping up, everywhere in the urban suburban tier in response to a proposed development. It does have limited criteria where in the urban suburban tier that these can be located. Specifically, the policy says the county recognizes that there are long-established rural residential enclave communities and homesteads in locations within the urban suburban tier that have low residential future land use designations. That would be LR1, LR2. And then also talks about low density areas in the urban suburban tier, because most areas have higher FLU designations than that. Also on parcels presently used for agricultural purposes, and then also parcels with special agricultural future land use categories. So it is kind of contained within the tier. With respect to the lot sizes, I know right along Lantana they are smaller. I believe once you get a little bit north of Lantana, they're more a third of an acre in size. Oh, yes, we actually have statistics on here. So for the whole area, the average lot size is 0.74, so almost 3/4 of an acre. 59 of the acres are lots of 1 acre or more. There are 44 parcels over 2 acres.
But as we know, average is average, and it's not the median. Do you guys have the median, and what exists there?
I don't have that figure in front of me.
I guess the real question is really, I would say the lots that are under a quarter acre, although, I mean, those are common in suburban and urban settings. So that's where I struggle with, I mean, the areas where you have the large lots, I have no concern about. I do have concerns about the land that's directly onto Lantana, and to my colleagues, if there were to be any development on any properties, that can be conditioned that they have access to Lantana, and if they can't get access to Lantana, then they can't build. but that would be something if, and I agree that that's important. I don't want to see incursion. However, that's something for a different day at a different discussion. But I do support, in general, I support the overlay for those larger, because there's clearly a very large section of this neighborhood that have large sort of rural-like type properties. But there's also, and I get concerned about what's exactly on Lantana Road, and based on what happened when we did Pioneer Road, and the understanding of that there is something different there, and we saw it when we did the ranches area as well, that, back inside in the interior, that was, we were protecting those parcels back there and actually creating a buffer, if you will, by using the properties up towards the roadway. So anyways, those are my comments on it. And I'm very mixed on this because I don't like the boundaries of this. Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Bernard, I missed your light, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support the overlay, and I support the motion, and I just would love for if the district commissioner can kind of let's see what we can do to address some of these concerns, because it's not, you have LR2s that are there, and so you don't have a complete rural community, and I just would love for us to kind of work on the boundaries. And so I'd love for us to work with the district commissioner when it comes back, but I would support the motion right now.
Okay, so this will be coming back.
Yes, this is transmittal, so yeah, you will be
so
seeing
it'll come
this
back
again.
2 more times, right?
One more time.
One more time.
Yeah.
I second it.
Okay, good, we've already done that.
I'll second it again.
You can't do that. It's not in Roberts.
I'm just
Commissioner Marino, so was I.
Just to follow up on my first question, if it's LR2 with the TDRs, how many units can they have?
Yep, we have the data too. It had to take me just a second.
Because at 52 units, basically, that's 1 unit per every third of an acre, the way it stands right now with LR1 with TDRs.
Right, I know their request is for 104 units. Let me see
Sorry,
if I have it.
104, 104?
Right, which is almost 6 units per, 5.7 units per acre. Yeah, I don't have that data with it LR2 maxed out, so I apologize.
Okay, thank you.
With respect to, for instance, available TDRs they could purchase, if you have LR1, you're able to purchase 1 TDR per acre. LR2 would be 2, so
Mr. Mayor, I just want to add one more thing. I know for me, I wouldn't support this project as an LR2 at all. So, even though we're having these discussions, but I believe that the LR1 and with the potential number of units, I would, if it's by right, I'm okay with it. But I know for LR2, I wouldn't support that, for the residents.
All right. All right, and I see no more lights lit. All right, so we have a motion in front of us to go ahead and this will be our transmittal, and it will come back for an adoption at a later date. So with that, all in favor? All opposed? That motion carries 7-0. All right. Moving on. We have 5A2, Commerce Text Update.
All right. Good morning again. So I will be running through this presentation fairly briefly. So this is follow-up from board direction that was previously given. As you'll remember, a few months ago, subsequent to the adoption of the Commerce Future Land Use Designation, there were 5 site-specific amendments for Commerce in the agricultural reserve tier, and there was discussion by the board on the potential maximum square footages that could be developed within the tier. So what's before you today is county proposed text amendment to the Commerce Future Land Use Designation specific to the agricultural reserve to revise the allowable floor area ratio, or FAR, reducing that figure from 0.45 to 0.35. The Commerce was also adopted for the urban suburban tier, which had that identical 0.45 FAR figure. I will note that in the comprehensive plan, the future land use element, there is a table that lays out the maximum FARs for each future land use designation in the county. And oftentimes you will see when there is a future land use designation that's permissible within the urban suburban tier as well as other tiers, say the exurban tier, the rural tier, the agricultural reserve tier. There often is a lower FAR in tiers outside of the urban suburban tier. So it would not be a new idea to have a lower FAR for this future land use designation in the ag reserve tier. Again, this was based on recent BCC direction. The other component of this amendment, which wasn't directly spoke about in the board direction, but was discussed a few times with site-specific amendments, it's not proposing any change to the location criteria in the agricultural reserve tier, but we did add a few clarification words to make clear the issue of the concern people had with a progression westward on State Road 7. So if there was, say, a mid-block site on State Road 7 that received the commerce designation, that you then couldn't start moving westward, and then it limits it to those Atlantic and Boynton corridors where it's applicable if you're adjacent and can access through the site. It's only in those two specific areas, not fully along the corridor. So again, this is just showing, oh, I think I skipped a slide, I apologize. Okay, yes, again, so this was adopted by the board, this future land use designation in 2022 following multiple requests for industrial in the tier. The rest I've pretty much covered. This just represents the language specifically on this page showing the additional language to clarify that location criteria. And then there was also an amendment to which did not make it in here. That table I mentioned in the future land use element of the comprehensive plan, they will now include a 0.35 note for the maximum FAR within the tier. So staff assessment based on board direction, this amendment modifies the maximum allowable FAR within the agricultural reserve tier. Again, it does not change, but further clarifies the location criteria for properties west of State Road 7 and does not propose to make any other changes to the commerce flue in terms of uses or anything of that nature. So with that, staff is recommending approval. This was before the Planning Commission last month, and they unanimously recommended approval to the board. So the motion would be to transmit.
All right, I don't see any lights lit. We have 3 cards, I see.
We have 3 cards: Gail Ladd, Sheila Calderon, Drew Martin.
I am Gail Ladd, and I am from 18195 Jupiter Landings Drive in Jupiter. And we think this is a wonderful thing that you're going lower in your floor area ratio, I'm sorry. But we would like it even lower. So we ask that you continue to look at this and go lower. Thank you.
Go right ahead.
Well, it's getting closer to say good afternoon. Sheila Calderon, Green Acres, Florida. Actually, I would only be repeating what Gail Ladd just said to you. Our concerns are that we would like the ratio to be lower. So that's where it's all at, so I won't waste your time. Thank you.
Drew Martin, I'm here on behalf of the Loxahatchee Group of the Sierra Club. I would agree with the 2 previous speakers, but I would say even more that is when you bring these up for these site plans up for approval, really to consider that we don't really think there's really that much need for commerce, and that the traffic situation is going to get really bad out there. And if the more you approve this, these sort of projects, the more that you're going to create a traffic problem, and it's going to cost county money. And in the long run, it's going to cost the county taxpayers money. So I hope you'll consider that as you review these projects in the future. But we do not oppose this existing amendment. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We have no other cards. We have no Commissioner or Vice Mayor, you're recognized.
Thank you, and thanks staff for the work you've been doing on this commerce classification. I just want to make sure that what we're talking about is the two corridors that are set out in the master plan, which is the corridor of Atlantic Avenue and Boynton Beach for this different classification.
So as part of this proposed text amendment, we're not proposing to change the location criteria. So the location criteria for commerce includes the Boynton Beach, Atlantic, and as discussed earlier, the State Road 7 corridors north of, right now, Rio Grande Avenue. So this amendment isn't proposing to change those location criteria.
Very good. And I just want to make sure that everybody knows that this was set out in the master plan in terms of putting in light industrial or commerce at the marketplaces of Atlantic Avenue and Boynton Beach Boulevards. All right. Thank you, sir.
And one point I neglected to mention in my presentation was that this is applicable to future applications. You already have applications in the pipeline that's submitted under the .45, so I just wanted to be clear.
Thank you. All right, Commissioner Baxter, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Kevin, you're saying this would apply to applications we've already approved?
No, so the applications that have already submitted, they submitted at a time when the .45, and it still is .45 as of now because it hasn't been adopted yet. So this reduction to .35 would not apply to those properties.
And for clarification, what exactly will this do? Will this just prevent more things from coming to us to decide?
No, what this would do is essentially lower the maximum potential build-out square footage of a property. So right now, when they make the calculation based on the acreage and apply .45 FAR, that's how you could calculate your maximum allowable square footage of the commerce uses. That .35 is roughly a 22% reduction, so it just lowers the intensity of the, or the amount of uses that could be built on any particular property.
So if we set this to .35, then it goes in front of staff as something higher, then you just recommend denial, but it still comes to us?
So it wouldn't be, they would not be able to submit for something higher than .35. So for instance, like using the Gold Coast example, so that had to do with location criteria. The reason that the text amendment needs to be initiated is because we can't intake a site-specific amendment because it doesn't meet the location criteria. So if an application was submitted with, if this is adopted to .35 higher than that, that would need another text amendment, so we wouldn't take the application in unless they meet that required FAR.
I guess that was what I was asking, so it would limit, anything above that.
Right, it would
Take
limit.
away, it
right.
wouldn't come to us then.
Right, we'd have to work with the applicant, and they would either have to reduce what they're proposing to that .35, or they could request that the board increase the FAR to a higher figure. But right, if the board adopts, or even today with .45, if someone submitted an application and saying we want a .5 FAR, that's not permissible. So that application as such wouldn't come to you.
How does this play into the total FAR that was taken into consideration in the Ag Reserve?
Yeah, so a rough calculation when looking at all the sites that could potentially, and again, we know not every site that's eligible for commerce is going to come in for commerce, but if every site maxed out at the .45 FAR, it was a figure roughly in the 5.8 million range. But we've seen a number of applications already submitted, and those are a fair bit lower than the maximum already. Many are in the low to mid .3s anyway. So with a .35 FAR, that would be, if everyone maxed out at that, it would bring it down about 1.3 million square feet to roughly 4.5 million square feet from 5.8 million.
My concern is, and we have so many homes down there, and I've said it before, and I guess it's worth repeating, we need supporting businesses down there. And if by limiting this, would we then potentially be limiting that availability of space for them?
I mean, I would note that with one or two exceptions, most of the applications have already been in that lower to mid 0.3 range anyway. So we haven't, I don't think there's any that has proposed right at the maximum of 0.45, and there was one, maybe two that were a little bit above the 0.35, but staff, and that was part of the comfort with 0.35. We didn't view it as such a drastic decrease, but still a decrease. But again, most of the site specifics we've seen are fairly consistent with this range.
And if most of the applicants are already there, I'm struggling with finding the necessity for lowering it.
To provide that assurance that, you know, if in the future larger sites and they are able to find ways to, you know, maximize the buildable, because again, you have drainage issues, there's other components to development, but this would just provide that hard line at 0.35. Again, a reduction of 0.45, which is what's allowed in the urban suburban tier. And like I mentioned, oftentimes in the rural exurban agricultural reserve tiers, you do see a lower intensity of allowable development than the urban suburban tier.
And this won't affect residential, just businesses?
Yeah, this amendment before you is limited in scope to just the commerce future land use designation. So this amendment doesn't have any impact on any residential.
I guess I'm just not in favor of not being able to decide. I would love the idea that when people want a certain type of business or a certain type of something, that it has to come before us. And if we feel it's too large, or if we feel it's too much floor area ratio, that we get that discretion. And I guess that's kind of where I'm struggling with this, just limiting it to limit it. And there might be special circumstances that we need them for, or need that area for. So thank you, Kevin.
Commissioner Woodward and then Commissioner Bernard.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I guess I can't remember if we discussed this on the board, but in multiple, excuse me, agenda reviews, I spoke with them about this because I know most of the applicants that came in initially were right around the 0.35 floor area ratio. And it seemed like that was kind of a sweet spot that was being hit because this designation actually changed the preserve requirement as well, which was what some of the concern was coming, that if they didn't have to have the same amount of preserve, they could go like way high. Planning commission meetings, it was getting very, like, it just wasn't clear. And it seemed like after the first round of applicants came in, 0.35 seemed to sort of be the sweet spot. And I asked for clarity on that just so that when the applicants are coming in, it goes before the board and they're dealing with it. Do go ahead and put that number there. If that seems like that's where they were landing, it just made it clearer for everyone and would help with the application process. So if that's, you did ask you talked about all of the ones before were right around that number anyway, right? And so my other concern, though, was that I know in straight ag or rural, it's like 0.15, right? FAR?
For AGR, correct. It's
For
0.15.
AGR, yeah.
Yes.
So this is a significant increase above AGR, but not all the way what's allowed in urban. So it just, I asked for this, for them to try to find where the sweet spot was, and I thank you for the work you put into it.
Thank you, Commissioner Bernard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's my struggle is with, as Commissioner Baxter stated, it's just why do we need to decrease it when the board can make that decision with a future application. So that's been my struggle. It's just, you know, is there a problem that we're trying to fix? I just don't know, so.
Vice Mayor, you're recognized.
I wonder if we could have a response to these issues, these questions, as to the need for this.
So again, this is back based on the board giving direction to staff to evaluate. So we're following up to board direction because the concern from many members of the public, but there was also discussion on the board, was how many millions of square feet of industrial spaces could be built in the agricultural reserve. So that was why they wanted staff to explore various methods to potentially have some kind of a reduction in what the ultimate build out of these uses could be.
All right, I see no other lights lit. We have no cards. Would somebody like to do something?
Hold on. We did cards already. if any point, I'm sorry, if any point in time someone wants to come to us that is larger than 3.35, they have the ability to ask to come to the Board of County Commissioners, correct? No or yes?
So they would need to, so if they wanted to do an application for a floor area ratio higher than what is set out in the comprehensive plan, they would have to request a privately proposed text amendment to modify the comprehensive plan.
So again, they still are, there is a step in place, a process in place if somebody wants to go higher than this.
Right, because they wouldn't be able
So
to
we're
just
not-
come and submit the site-specific application, though.
Correct. So we're really not taking anything away from anybody.
Right, because a privately proposed text amendment is an avenue. Adds a little time, but yes, it's there.
With that, I will make a motion to transmit the Commerce Future Land Use text updates.
We have a motion by Commissioner Marino and a second by Commissioner Woodward. I don't see any further discussion on this item. All right, let's take a vote.
Aye.
You want to say something? Oh, sorry. Let's take a vote. All in favor? Any opposed? We have, so it's 5-2. And you got, it was Commissioner Bernard and Commissioner Baxter in opposition. Okay, we will go ahead and transmit. All right, moving on. We are going into item number 5.B.1. This is the Erickson.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Jennifer Morton with J. Morton Planning and Landscape Architecture, and thank you very much for not breaking for lunch before I was able to present. So,
Oh, trust me, we'll be breaking for lunch.
yes. Okay, this is the Erickson Senior Living project. You've seen this once before. The subject property is located on the southwest corner of Boynton Beach Boulevard and the Florida Turnpike. It's 93 acres in size. We have a request for a land use change on 62.33 acres to go from AGR to institutional CLR, as well as to initiate the text, or to transmit the text amendment, which would allow for the CLR. The subject property is highlighted here in yellow, and we're proposing we're proposing institutional CLR on a portion of the 93 acres. We're requesting it on 62.33. The remainder of the property will maintain the AGR land use. As far as intensity goes, we're proposing a 1,192-bed CLF and 70-bed skilled nursing. We do have conditions of approval that limit the intensity for the project. When we have a zoning application that's in process, and that will be back before you with the details and the site plan. But what I did want to show you is the clustering that we're proposing with the development. We're proposing to cluster the development on 55 acres up along Boynton Beach Boulevard, and the remainder of the property will be in preservation area. And this is just kind of a big picture graphic showing actually the amount of open space that potentially could be set aside in this area. Many of you are familiar with the Canyon District Park. It's a 50-acre park. Some of you were at the ribbon cutting. They're on to phase 2 now. And when these two projects come before you, if they're approved, there will be a significant amount of additional open space for this area. This proposed land use change is consistent with the comprehensive plan. It's consistent with the ag reserve tier requirements. It's consistent with the compatibility requirements, as well as the facilities and service requirements. The proposed land use request provides for all of our preservation to be on site, which I think is unique to these particular projects in this area. The proposed use, the CLR use, generates less traffic than other potential users, such as the essential housing land use category or the commerce land use category. The proposed use has no impacts on schools. It also helps to keep families together and really creates multi-generational communities. In conclusion, I'm happy to report that staff is recommending approval of this land use change. The Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval to transmit, and we do have support from both COBRA and BARC for the land use change. And that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, I'm here to answer them.
Any questions? Not seeing any. Okay, staff?
Hello again, Jerry Lodge, Planning Division. This item has two components. First is a text amendment, which was initiated by the board last August, and a companion future land use amendment request from Ag Reserve to institutional with underlying CLR. So first we'll go over a brief history of the CLR land use. In 2017, the designation was created for the urban suburban tier only for sites seeking to develop congregate living facilities. At that same time, there were three privately proposed text amendment requests for sites in the Ag Reserve to allow for this use, which had not been yet developed due to density constraints. Ultimately, two of those were withdrawn by the applicant, and the third was adopted by the board and is now known as All Seasons Delray. The All Seasons Delray text amendment, which was adopted last April, created policies and a plan that allow the CLR land use to exist in Ag Reserve tier, subject to specific criteria, which includes a maximum density of 8 units per acre for properties that are 5 acres or larger in size, and they must front Lyons Road between Atlantic Avenue and Linton Boulevard. And there's also a requirement to provide 50% off-site and 10% on-site preserve area. So the applicant's proposed text amendment is requesting to revise policies in the plan for the CLR FLU in Ag Reserve tier. Specifically, they're requesting for a new development option, which would allow a 60% on-site preserve area. Also to allow the same preserve uses as those that are permitted in the recently adopted essential housing future land use designation, which includes up to 10% of the preserve area being used for water management features that have an enhanced environmental features. And finally, to adjust the sites that would be eligible for CLR by changing the location criteria. Specifically, it would allow properties fronting Boynton Beach Boulevard between Florida's Turnpike and Acme Dairy Road. So the red line there shows the segment of Boynton Beach Boulevard that would be affected by the CLR location criteria being changed by this proposal. And as you can see, all the properties that are that would be affected are already in process for site-specific land use amendments, including this application, Erickson Boynton Beach. And then on the north side is BC Commerce Center requesting the commerce land use, and west of the site is Logan Ranch Residential requesting the essential housing future land use designation. So for the FLUA request, the applicant's proposing to change the land use designation on the 93.51 acre site. It's located on the south side of Boynton Beach Boulevard, east of Acme Dairy Road. The amendment would change the designation of the site from AGR to institutional with an underlying congregate living residential on 62.33 acres, and the remaining 31.17 acres would retain the AGR land use. The concurrent rezoning application is requesting to change the zoning district from AGR to MUPD in order to develop just under 1,200 CLF beds and 70 skilled nursing beds. So the comp plan allows for mixed or multiple use developments to utilize both the maximum density for CLF beds under the residential FLU, being the CLR, and that also would allow for the maximum intensity permitted for the institutional FLU. So the CLR FLU in the Ag Reserve allows 8 units per acre in the Ag Reserve tier, and calculating CLF beds is done by taking the allowed density, multiplied by the acreage with the CLR FLU, and then multiplying that by the 2.39 persons per household multiplier. The site's also able to utilize the intensity of the proposed institutional FLU for the proposed nursing home beds, which is calculated in the ULDC based on 1 nursing home bed per 1,000 square feet of total lot area that has that institutional flu. So here's the surrounding site, and there's the site itself outlined in red. It's primarily surrounded by AGR future land use designations. Existing commercial uses are located west of the site, including Cobblestone Plaza, MUPD, and the Canyon Town Center. Additional commercial and institutional future land uses are at the northwest corner of Boynton Beach Boulevard and Acme Dairy Road. West of the site is an elementary school and middle school, as well as the recently developed Canyon District Park. East of the site is the urban suburban tier, and north and west of the site are the previously discussed amendments in process. So staff's analysis finds that the proposed CLF will provide additional housing diversity in the tier, and it's consistent with the recommendations made by consultants in the Ag Reserve Master Plan, which recommended a variety of housing types, including residential institutional uses, such as nursing homes and assisted living facilities. Additionally, the proposed request is compatible with surrounding future land uses and the required 37-acre preserve, plus or minus, which is proposed on the south side of the site, will provide a large separation between the existing residences that are there now. So staff's recommending 2 conditions of approval. The first one is to limit the development to 1,192 CLF beds and 70 skilled nursing beds as proposed in the concurrent zoning application. And the second one is to have a concurrent adoption hearing for the FLUA text and rezoning applications. Staff's recommending approval with conditions. Planning Commission unanimously voted 10-0 to approve with conditions, and the motion is to transmit.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions of staff? All right, we have 3 cards on this item.
Pardon me. Gail Ladd, Drew Martin, and Sheila Calderon, I do not wish to speak, but I oppose card.
I'm Gail Ladd from Jupiter, Florida, and good afternoon. I am in favor of the institutional CLR, except for I don't want it here. I really feel like even though they said there were not going to be a lot of traffic issues, it just seems like when people visit these facilities, there is a lot of traffic. And I think that the agricultural use is a much better use in the agricultural preserve. So I ask that you say no. Thank you.
Drew Martin, I'm here on behalf of the Loxahatchee Group of the Sierra Club. I agree with what Gail Ladd just said, and I think that, it's another, little bit of chipping away at the Ag Reserve because you're taking ag land and you're converting it to something else. So while, as Gail said, we wouldn't oppose the, the use of this for congregate living facilities, it will increase traffic and it will reduce agriculture. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I don't see any more lights. Commissioner Woodward, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. This lot still has its development rights?
Yeah, it could develop under the AGR zoning.
Commissioner Baxter, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a few questions. It says it's going to be 1,200 beds. Is that what I'm understanding? And there was a map up there that concerned me. Are there a lot of things surrounding this that are already in process of being developed? And a school, I believe somebody had even mentioned, like right down the road. So do we have traffic studies showing how that affects this particular area once everything is put in?
Yes, all the other projects which have already been approved or which are going through the process, they are taken care of by, these proposed projects. So they add those traffic as background traffic from the other projects in the area.
And it shows that this particular area can handle
Correct, for policy 3.5D. This is the planning application we are dealing with right now. So they meet these standards.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Right? Somebody like to make a motion?
So move, Mr. Mayor.
We have a motion by Commissioner Bernard to
second.
transmit. We have a second by Commissioner Marino. And I assume that motion was with the conditions, correct? Yep, good. All right. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, all opposed, that motion carries 7-0. All right. So we're at that point in time where we're going to be able to take a break. So we will be back at 1:30 to begin, and we will beginning with item 5B2, Indian Trails Grove AGR Exchange. Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you after lunch.